For 5 long months in 2025, China bought zero soybeans from the United States, a stunning break in a decades-long trade relationship that had shaped global agriculture. The silence was deafening, and the ripple effects were felt far beyond the ports and silos. This sudden halt came right at the start of the U.S. export season, leaving ships idle at the docks and farmers across the Midwest anxious about their livelihoods. The usual bustle of trade was replaced by an uneasy stillness. For over 20 years, American farmers had relied on China as their top customer, growing soybeans mainly for export. Entire communities depended on this trade, and the rhythm of the seasons was tied to Chinese demand. China, needing vast amounts of soybeans to feed its livestock, especially pigs, had always been a dependable buyer. The relationship seemed unbreakable, built on mutual need and trust. The sudden halt left U.S. farmers with a massive surplus and deep uncertainty about their future. Silos overflowed, and unsold beans piled up, while questions about next season's planting loomed large. The absence of China, the world's biggest soybean buyer, sent shockwaves through the industry. Prices plummeted, and the entire supply chain was thrown into chaos. Was this a temporary pause or a permanent shift in global trade? No one knew for sure, and speculation ran wild in boardrooms and farmhouses alike. The event exposed just how fragile international trade can be, subject to politics, shifting alliances, and global tensions that can change everything overnight. The old, predictable ways of doing business were gone, forcing everyone from farmers to policymakers to rethink their strategies and adapt to a new, uncertain reality. The future of American agriculture suddenly looked far less certain as the world watched to see what would happen next. China's decision wasn't random or impulsive. Instead, it was a calculated move, shaped by years of escalating trade disputes and shifting global alliances. When tensions rise, China often uses its immense buying power as a tool to send strong political messages, just as it did in 2018, and again in 2025, during periods of heightened trade friction with the U.S. During the halt in American soybean purchases, China simply turned to Brazil, which quickly stepped up and became its main supplier, filling the gap almost overnight. For a time, Brazilian soybeans were not only more available, but also cheaper, making them an even more attractive option for Chinese importers. China's ability to rapidly switch suppliers gives it significant leverage and flexibility in the global market, allowing it to adapt quickly to changing circumstances. This move was also part of China's broader, long-term strategy to diversify its food sources, reduce reliance on any single country, and strengthen its own food security. Even if diplomatic relations improve, China may never return to its previous levels of buying from the U.S., as new supply chains have already been established. For American farmers, the message was clear. Being a reliable supplier isn't enough in a world where politics and economics are so closely linked. Global competition and shifting political winds can change the direction of trade overnight, leaving even the biggest players vulnerable. The U.S. had to face a new reality. Its status as the world's top soybean supplier was no longer guaranteed, and the landscape of global trade had changed for good. When China suddenly stepped back from the U.S. soybean market, American exporters had to act quickly and rethink their entire strategy almost overnight. The U.S. soybean market diversified rapidly as exporters scrambled to find new partners and opportunities in unfamiliar territories. Mexico dramatically increased its purchases, quickly rising to become the second largest buyer of American soybeans, a role it had never played before. Egypt also surged, reaching record import levels and signaling a new era of trade between the two countries. Other countries like Germany, Vietnam, Pakistan, and Bangladesh stepped up as well, each boosting their imports and helping to fill the gap left by China. This surge in global demand helped offset some of the losses from China's pause, keeping the industry afloat during uncertain times. Diversification reduced the industry's dependence on a single, politically sensitive market, making it less vulnerable to sudden disruptions. The crisis taught U.S. farmers the value of having many customers and the importance of building relationships across the globe. Relying on one big buyer is risky business, as the industry learned firsthand. The pivot to new markets showed the resilience and adaptability of American agriculture, even in the face of global uncertainty. Building these new relationships is now crucial for long-term stability, ensuring the industry can weather future storms. In the end, the industry emerged more adaptable, more connected, and better prepared for whatever challenges may come next. In January 2026, China suddenly returned, buying 10 large shipments of U.S. soybeans. Relief swept through the American farm community. Price shifts made U.S. soybeans competitive again, and trade talks encouraged China's return. The purchases signaled a possible end to the standoff and helped stabilize prices. But the 5-month gap proved how quickly things can change. Farmers are now more cautious, aware that China's return doesn't guarantee old patterns. The experience reinforced the need to keep building relationships with other buyers. The lesson: never rely on just one partner. The China episode exposed the risks of America's export-heavy farm model. About half of U.S. soybeans are shipped abroad, mostly as unprocessed beans. When a major buyer disappears, farmers are left with unsold crops and falling incomes. Most of the profit from processing soybeans happens overseas, leaving U.S. farmers as price takers. Their livelihoods depend on unpredictable global politics. The 5-month halt was a wake-up call. Farmers did everything right, but still faced crisis. The industry is rethinking its export strategy, seeking more stability and control. Reducing vulnerability to foreign shocks is now a top priority. The goal: a more resilient agricultural economy, less at the mercy of global events. The solution? Process more soybeans in the U.S. instead of shipping raw beans overseas. Value-added processing, crushing beans at home, creates soybean oil and meal for domestic use or higher-value exports. Since 2023, billions have been invested in new processing plants, aiming to boost U.S. capacity by 25%. This shift could let America process most of its own crop, reducing dependence on foreign buyers. Demand for biofuels, especially renewable diesel, is driving this investment. Government policies are supporting the trend, creating a strong domestic market. Processing at home offers farmers more stability and profit, insulating them from global trade shocks. The future: a resilient, profitable U.S. soybean industry, with more value staying in America.